There's a lot around to talk when it comes to defence right now, so there's only one bloke to talk to about it. Senator Jim Molan. Of course, we always love having a chat to him and always good to get him on the show, so let's do it right now. So, apart from anything else, I started to read today that some defence boffins apparently at Senate estimates are starting to talk about that apparently we're thinking about Plan B in and around the subs and $90 billion. Yourself and our dear friend Bronwyn Bishop have gone back and forth many, many times about whether this is the right way to go or not. How fair dinkum is Plan B here?
Paul, I think it's always good in contracts, especially contracts that go to $90 billion plus over a long, long period of time, to have alternatives. And if you've got some kind of alternative in your back pocket, you've got some leverage against a big producer. And this is a real problem we've got in Australia, that we lack the primes, the people who actually make the equipment in Australia, and therefore we're always being held to ransom by foreign companies. Now, I think that this is an important issue, but I don't believe in any way, shape, or form that it shows that we're backing off from the French attack submarine. The Secretary of the Department of Defence, Greg Moriarty himself, said that, yes, we're looking at alternatives. He didn't say it, but I'll say it. Those alternatives may not even be submarines. Those alternatives, but for example, you can conduct almost everything that a submarine can do with aircraft and satellites. You can sink ships, you can sink submarines, you can insert special forces, you can hide in certain places, you can conduct surveillance. So that's always something we've got. We could just cancel out of this submarine program if it goes wrong. But I have to say that the Secretary himself said that Defence is absolutely committed to the attack class submarine, and I expect him to keep saying that, Paul, until he is uncommitted to this attack class submarine. He said he's not going back on the original. He's not going back to the original German submarine, but there are now more advanced German submarines that might be an alternative. And he was asked about the Swedish boat, and he made no comment on that. So my feel is that we are, and I do believe that it's the best alternative at this stage, apart from a nuclear submarine, but we can't get a nuclear submarine. It's the best alternative in this idiocy of not being able to go nuclear.
So also, it's late enough at night for us to have an adult conversation here, which is, I've been interesting to read, and you talk about this the past couple of days, that the traditional notion of sovereignty and national sovereignty doesn't necessarily work in the battle against China. Can you better explain to people what that means?
Well, I'd say about the word sovereignty is absolutely critical. What we are as a nation is a sovereign nation. And sovereignty really means the ability of Australia to act in its own interests. And sovereignty in anything, whether it's defence industry or in how we commit our troops, sovereignty doesn't exist as a point where you've either got sovereignty or you don't have sovereignty. It's a sliding scale. So the Americans ask us to go to Afghanistan and Iraq, and we agree to go to Afghanistan and Iraq. We surrender a bit of our sovereignty in order to get something else from the Americans, perhaps assistance sometime in the future. China may try and intimidate us and be assertive or aggressive towards us, and that may lower our sovereignty. What is being talked about at the moment, because we're in the middle of a very, very big show in Brisbane, a 3-day arms show called Land Forces 2021. And this is, in fact, today there are a whole bunch of protests by the normal cancel. We passed cancel culture now, Paul. We're into cancel tanks. So these idiots were there and did it again, and they all got thrown in the slammer, which was very, very good. It's like being back in Joe's time in Queensland now. But what these people are talking about, two really experienced people in the defence industry game, Jim McDowell and Ben Green, is how to improve the system we've got in Australia to get us the weapons and the ammunition and the spare parts if we have to go to war. This is essential because the silliness of what we're doing at the moment is we're trying to use the market and globalisation to make us not prosperous, which it does every day of the week, but to make us secure. The market will never make us secure. The government's got to do that. We don't ask the market to fund the Australian Defence Force. So these people, these good people in defence industry, they point out that it's very hard to have a defence industry in Australia for the simple reason that the Australian Defence Force is too small. Well, I've got a really brilliant scheme. Let's make the Australian Defence Force big enough. Big enough because we need a more lethal Defence Force, we need a more sustainable Defence Force that can fight for longer, and we need a bigger Defence Force. So there's two problems solved just in one go, Paul.
See how you do it, bang, bang, boom. I love it. Now, also, just finally here, I wanted to get your response to Each Way Albo, right? Now, when he was on Channel 2 last year, pretending to be all tough on China, and now he thinks that Twitter has settled upon Scott Morrison and yourself talk tough about China because there's good politics in it. Roll the tape from what he said in Canberra today. Anyway, I don't know what he basically said.
I saw that before.
Being done for political gain. What's your sense of that, mate?
Well, as Churchill said, politics and strategy at the top level of any nation are inseparable. What Churchill was talking about, though, was the politics that runs a country, not the politics where two parties fight each other and try to get one getting better than the other. I don't think we will ever get bipartisanship in relation to defence. The only bipartisanship at the moment in defence between the coalition and Labor is that let's not talk about defence. What I would like to see, and I don't think Albo got it, but I think he was talking about strategy at one stage, and I have always said that we need to get a public strategy out there. I'm told we have a strategy, but we need to get a public version of that out there so that we, the people who are being secured, who are paying for this security, whose future it is, Paul, can make a decision about whether it is the right strategy, whether we're doing enough, and whether we're doing the right thing. The coalition is doing brilliantly on defence. I think we've just got to do a lot more, and we've got to do it faster.
Absolutely. Good on you, Jim. Nice to talk to you, mate. I do appreciate it. This is, in fact, what Albo had to say. Just one more time.
When it comes to China, though, clearly both sides of politics have hardened their positions. You said during the week that China's stance has changed under Xi Jinping. You said they are far more interventionist than was the case under previous regimes. What did you mean by interventionist?
I mean they're more assertive, and we can see that played out in a number of ways, and therefore that requires a response by the Australian government in the national interest. This isn't a partisan issue.
But then, of course, went on to say, yes, it totally was, and it's all being played for politics. Each Way Albo, that's what we like to call him.